from Carlos Azus News, and today is a day dedicated to Latin America. While we won't have enough time to get into all the rich history of this nation, we'll have plenty of time to explore the Amazon and look into the general trends of Latin America. But before we can begin, we go to Heather Pierre for the introduction for Latin America.
In the 1960s, Latin American countries were dependent on the U.S. Because of the dependency, the Latin country governments began to fall and economic instability spread throughout the nation. But because of the governments falling, democratic regimes began to come, and instead of dictatorships. Another major issue in Latin America were the growing populations. Because the growing populations were growing so much, they were forced to make megacities, which led to crime, corruption, drug deals, and a gap between the poor and the rich. Nevertheless, Latin America's culture is rich with literature, art, and architecture.
Thanks for that, Heather. On our first stop of Latin America, it's actually not lying in the 20 countries of Latin America. Going north, we'll be going to North America to see how they were involved in the 40s with Latin America. Here with us today is the president at the time, Franklin D. Roosevelt. Hello, Mr. President. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, it's no problem. When I was asked to come do an interview about Latin America, I said, Latin America, I'll pack up my bags and go.
But on a more serious note, can you tell us why the United States began the involvement with Latin America in the first place?
Well, because Latin America were facing economic and political instability. Chile, Brazil, and Argentina were promoting multinational corporations, which, as you know, are companies with divisions in more than 2 countries. Since we started to get into this trend with them, and as we kept making business investments with the other countries in Latin America, the more we were pressured into presenting social and political changes in Latin America.
Is this why the United States decided to form the Organization of American States?
The OAS was formed to coordinate actions in economic, political, and military matters, as we originally thought that the OAS was going to end the military actions of the United States and Latin America, but it did not. America stayed around.
And why is that?
The Cold War was happening, and both the US and Latin America were fighting communism. We provided a huge amount of military aid to support the anti-communist regimes in Latin America.
Well, thank you so much for your time and knowledge, Mr. President. It was an honor having you here.
It was Amazoning to be here.
We'll be right back after this commercial.
Straight from El Chapo de Yoking. La joking around mustaches, all for your punning needs.
I'm just kidding. But seriously, buy the mustaches. Alright, anyway, putting all United States things aside, we will also take a closer look into the society of Latin America. To help us better understand the roles of women in society, please welcome our 2 special guests, Valentina Hernandez and Maria Cotos Lopez. Hello, ladies. Thank you so much for coming.
It's our pleasure. We'd love to inform people about our heritage.
Ask us anything, and we'll happily answer.
Perfect! Okay, so now, first question for you, Maria. If I'm not mistaken, you play more of a traditional role in womanhood.
Yes, that's correct.
What is that?
I work in my household with things like cleaning, cooking, and helping my children.
Oh, and even though this is a more traditional look on women, is it still common in Latin American society?
Yes, and of course, women's roles has also progressed into the work life, like Valentina.
I'm a doctor. I used to be a banker, but then I lost interest.
Was it hard for you to become a doctor?
Well, I'll tell you, it wasn't as difficult for me as it was for women in the past, because for me, the roles of women were rapidly changing and growing. Women like me could also become teachers and professors and so much more.
Inspiring. Thank you, ladies, for your insightful answers. Unfortunately, it looks like that's the end of our interview. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
It was my pleasure.
Continuing on society in Latin America and economic instabilities were not strangers to each other. One reason for this is because of the growing populations there. Between 1950 and 2000, the population of Latin America more than tripled and is expected to reach 634 million by 2020. Because of this, very large cities, typically ones with populations of over 10 million, called megacities, are very common. But these megacities were very problematic. One of the biggest problems were having the slums being found in many of these megacities. These slums were where huge crime, corruptions, and drug trade happened. This was especially bad in places like Bolivia, Peru, and Colombia. Speaking of Colombia, our next interview is with a Colombian man himself. It is the world-renowned author who wrote 100 Years of Solitude, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Welcome, Mr. Marquez.
Mr. Marquez is my father. Call me Gabriel.
Can you tell us about your book, Gabriel?
My book, 100 Years of Solitude, is about a family called the Buenda family, whose patriarch founds the town of Macondo, which is a metaphoric Colombia.
And if I'm not mistaken, this novel is an example of magic realism. Can you explain to us what this is?
Magic realism is a unique form of expression. It brings together realistic events with dreamlike or fantasy backgrounds.
That sounds like a difficult thing to do. It sounds like you must have spent 100 years in solitude writing this book. Well, thanks so much for your time. We'll be right back after this commercial.
Spend all your time waiting for that second chance, for a break that would make it okay.
Hello.
Oscar, how are you? Now, if I'm remembering correctly, you were appointed chief architect for Brazil's new capital, Brasilia, in 1960. Is that right?
Yes, I have some pictures right here.
Oh, you brought pictures.
Right here.
Wow, absolutely beautiful. It must feel amazing to have a Brazilian people walk through your architect every day.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today before our last segment with the weather with Phil Storm.
It's gonna be a hot week with high temps in the high 80s and high 90s. If you said it would be too chilly for shorts, I wouldn't believe you. But if you're living in the Andes Mountains and you're planning on playing cards in the snow this weekend, you better shovel your deck, because it's going to be a cold one. I'm Phil Storm signing out.